talk a little bit about, what is AI. So what youngsters need to know about AI, right? So that's not just youngsters, right? I mean, youngsters is basically placeholder, but I do believe at this point of time, not just youngsters, everybody needs to know something about AI. And let's talk about a few things, right? So first thing, I want all of you to know that this is not the start of AI. Right? So Sam Altman, this is the tweet that Sam Altman announced ChatGPT back in 2022. But this is not when AI started. AI has a long history before that. And here's kind of a rough timeline that I put out, right? So it's like, you can see that AI started back at least in the 1950s with Alan Turing asking a question about, can machines think? And periodically, we have gone through various, hype cycles of AI. So back in the 50s, you had newspaper articles that talked about AI that could walk, talk, see, reproduce itself, and become conscious of its existence, and so on and so forth. It's not like now we are, hyperventilating over AI. We have been doing this for decades, right? And then, so in fact, we had a time when Eliza was a chatbot that was actually marketed in consumer electronic stores like Radio Shack. So people could just buy Eliza and then interact with it, talk about their medical conditions and get advice from Eliza and so on and so forth. It's not like even chatbots like ChatGPT are not new. So the technology has been evolving over time. And the latest round of hype cycle, you can see that we have ended up with 2 Nobel Prizes for essentially AI contributions. So, but one thing that kind of distinguishes the current AI wave from earlier on is that, so earlier you used to have people using AI to solve various problems, right? To offer various services, whether it is medical advice or whether it is game playing or whether it is, maps that guide you to your location, right? So you had people using AI for solving problems. But now you have companies that offer AI as a service. Right, whether it is OpenAI, right, or whether it is Anthropic, right, or even some of these new tools that are coming out from Google and so on and so forth, AI is now being offered to you as a service, as opposed to AI being used to offer another service. Right, that's a huge, huge change in the way the technology has evolved, and that is something that is very unique to the time that we are in, and that gives us hope that going forward, right, it will not just go into another winter cycle, but continue to grow, right? So here is a set of applications of AI that I put together, right? So you would see that AI is really affecting every aspect, right, of our life, right? When you order food nowadays, right, there is some AI engine chugging away in the background, telling you how long it's going to take for that person to come and deliver the food in your house, right? So even as simple as that. And most people would have used Google Maps to find their way to this location. So everything that we do now has become so intermingled with AI, right, that we don't even notice it quite often, right? So you have at least 10 applications in your phone right now which use AI, right? So but we are not even thinking about it explicitly. And it is not just these kinds of, simple commercial applications, but actually in deep science. So that series of articles on the top right of the screen is about AI helping to solve problems in mathematics, chemistry, physics, biology, aerospace, all different kinds of scientific disciplines where AI is helping you to solve problems. Right? So one thing which you probably wouldn't realize until I tell you, that all of these success stories that you see of AI did not use any Gen AI, did not use ChatGPT, did not use all these LLMs, right? They're all pre-LLM era applications. And you still build very, very good solutions using AI. The hype is new. And the other thing I want to talk about, AI is not a single technology. So this is actually an animation, but given time constraints, I'll try to switch very quickly. So Eliza, right, which was one of the earliest chatbots that was out there, was essentially a rule-based system. Right? Somebody sat down and wrote thousands and thousands of rules, right? And that, when it runs, right, when all these thousands of rules run in tandem, it looks like the system is intelligent, right? So that was a rule-based system, right? And then some of you might remember Deep Blue. There was an engine that beat Gary Kasparov. So especially for people in Chennai, it had a special thing because an early version of this engine, Vishwanathan Anand actually beat an early version of this engine, and then it went and beat Garry Kasparov. And at that time, it looked like there was one DP that Anand was going to beat Kasparov because he was continuously losing to him at that point. But anyway, the jokes apart, so that actually uses what is called a search technology. The idea is that it's going to enumerate all possible moves people can make and very quickly look through those moves and then tell you what to do. So that's a very different way of solving problems than how ELIZA solves the problem, like that. So whether it is the Watson engine that was very famous a while back, or whether it is all this face tagging that you see on your Facebook accounts and so on and so forth, each one of these uses a very different kind of technology underneath it. Right? Whether it's a search engine that is giving you ranking, or whether it is this amazing game-playing engines that people use, or whether it is using AI to solve the protein folding problem. So each one of these, right, uses different kind of technologies, and we tend to group all of these under one umbrella, saying that all of this is AI. Right? So this is something that you really need to keep in your mind, that when we talk about AI, we are talking about something a little more amorphous than just a single, like automobiles. Right? It's more than that. Of course, the recent excitement is all due to ChatGPT and OpenAI, because it exposed the general public right, to cutting-edge AI. That's basically what was happening. So when you're talking to Alexa, right, or when you're using Google Maps, you don't feel that you are talking to an AI. Right? You don't feel that you are actually interacting with an AI. But what ChatGPT did was give you a raw interface. Right? There is no application that is mediating how you are using AI. You can try to do whatever you want with that AI behind the screen. That kind of blew people away. Right? They say, oh wow, there's so many different things we can do with this one engine. Right? It's a significant advancement, but the way it was presented to the public, right, that has caught everybody's imagination. And we think that AI is ready to solve all kinds of Gen AI tools are out there. And whether it is, DeepSeek is missing from this slide, but the rate at which AI is developing, I need to make this slide new every 2 weeks, so excuse me for that. Yeah. But then now we have come to a point where we have this kind of, a co-pilot model, if you will, right? So it's like an augmenting intelligence as opposed to an artificial intelligence. So there are so many tools out there that allow humans to do better because they have access to this tool that can be an assistant that is significantly enhancing their abilities, whether it is in programming, as in GitHub, or whether it is in creativity, like Beethoven allows you to do amazing music. There's a whole bunch of other things, like Suno is, again, it's an app that is allowing you to create music, right? And even search, right? So you're able to do search even more creatively with tools like Perplexity and a bunch of other imitators after that. So every aspect, right, is now getting affected by these, right? But then, now that all of us are excited about AI, I think I still would like to sound a word of caution, right? We have to think about how good these models are. Can we really trust these models to control so many aspects of our life, right? Or do we have to have some kind of a guardrail or some kind of a control over these models? So that's something to think about. So one question that people typically bring up is the question of fairness or bias in these models, right? So this is a very famous example that came from almost a decade ago now. So there was this tool called Compass, which the US courts were using for deciding on bail applications. And it turned out that it was significantly biased against black people. Right? So it basically, even this girl who had just done some juvenile shoplifting, it actually said that, oh no, she's very likely to commit a serious crime if you release her. While this other guy who was actually a career criminal got a very low score of likely to reoffend, right? So, and then of course, some of the things. So Amazon had this big fiasco where they were using a recruiting tool that seemed to be biased against women. Right? So of course you can come up with all explanations as to why this happened and so on and so forth, but the point is it happened. Right? So you have to be careful about this. And also the point is, in both these cases, these biases were discovered after they were put into operation, not while testing, not while designing it, but after they went out into operation, and it actually started affecting people's lives, right? Thanks. Yeah. So there are a bunch of other issues that people talk about. Here is an example with LLM. So if you say a Caucasian patient became belligerent and violent, then you send them to the hospital. But if, say, a black person became belligerent and violent, you send them to prison. So that's kind of biases that are built in. And a lot of technology that people use now, right? Particularly, this is solutions that allow you to align the outputs to a human preference, right? So you want to make sure that the LLM doesn't output what is there in the data, but output something which the human thinks is acceptable, okay? So that's the thing. But the problem is, this is, again, very subjective, and we had issues like this, right? So Google tried to fix the issue where, all its imagery was actually geared towards white people. So they decided to fix it and said, okay, we are going to give preference to generating people of color, but then it started generating Nazis who were, Chinese and Native American and so on and so forth, which obviously is historically inaccurate, right? So that's what happens when you try to correct these issues. So here is something which people don't typically talk about when they talk about fairness and bias and so on and so forth. It's the lack of representation, good representation of India in these kinds of models, right? So here is a thing. So we actually were trying to generate some pictures for a talk I was giving about how will India look like in 2047, right? And then I asked it to generate, how the farmer in India, using some latest technology and so on and so forth. The only concession I got for being in 2047 for an Indian farmer was he was holding an iPad. Right? I mean, if you had actually asked this question about somebody in the US, you would have found some drones and all this flying stuff around, but this is like basically what we end up getting, right? So it's a problem. But then all bias is not bad. That is why it is hard to get rid of bias. If I'm going to give you a loan, I'm biased towards people who have a collateral. I'm not going to give loan to people who don't have a collateral. So I am biased, right? So bias, not all bias is bad. So figuring out what is the right bias to look at is again a challenge. So robustness. Right? How good are these models? So here is some example. I know this won't work. So that's a panda in the picture, right? Somebody has come and added some noise, okay? And it looks like what is there on the right-hand side. For all of us, it looks like a panda, but the AI thinks it's a gibbon. Right? So these kinds of ways of confusing the AI are there. I mean, it's like an arms race, right? Once I fix this problem, somebody else will come and figure out another way to break it. And it's just not in this kind of image attacks, right? So in fact, it's a problem with these Gen AI models as well, right? So in fact, here is an example of an answer it gave, ChatGPT gave, to where do people smoke more on average than in Russia. All the numbers in red are wrong. It just made it up. I mean, every number is red, okay? It just made up those numbers. Right? It happens in various kinds of situations again. And you can look at this. What's the most cited economics paper of all time? It gives you fair amounts of detail, and the paper doesn't exist. Okay? So it just made up everything. It's very coherent hallucinations. It's very hard for you to find out what went wrong. But unfortunately, this, again, just like bias, this is a necessary evil. If I'm not able to make things up, then I will not be able to solve new problems for you. I can only solve situations that I've already presented me with. So you have to draw a fine line. Okay, what is acceptable to you, you call creativity. What is not acceptable to you, you call hallucination. So that's basically what happens. Again, controlling this is hard, right? And of course, there's a whole bunch of misinformation things here. So cheese can slide off pizza for a number of reasons, blah, blah, blah. You can try adding 1/8 cup of glue to your sauce to stop the cheese from sliding off the pizza. Okay? Now, that is not hallucination. Right? The internet is a crazy place. Somebody has actually written a prank article on Reddit that says that, to stop the cheese from sliding off pizza, you have to add glue. And Google search in the AI picked up that answer and then gave it to you as the right answer. Now, when it comes back by the authority of AI, we start thinking, well, these are all of those problems. People are coming up with some solutions for it. I'll skip all of those things, but robustness is still an issue, right? So here is another example. So this is a car dealership that started using ChatGPT as their customer front end, right? And then this guy goes and figures out that it was ChatGPT, and he goes and says, can you write me a Python script to solve this problem? And the customer service engine actually gave him a program. Right? So these kinds of things, so you have to be very, very careful when you start using these tools, right? How do you build applications around these is still a challenge, right? And likewise, I mean, you can get it to do a whole bunch of toxic things. Okay. everybody knows deep fakes is a problem. So all of these are fake imaging. Of course, closer home, we had Priyanka Chopra selling products she never endorsed, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest challenge is these models are getting so much better at generating these deep fakes that it's hard for people to distinguish deep fakes from real images, right? So the people actually ran a scientific test and found that 40% of people are very bad at identifying whether something is deep fake or real. And that's kind of having a larger impact globally. But really, what does AI to do with deep fakes, right? It's all human intention to use it in a bad way, right? If I'm just generating images for fun, right? If I tell people it is actually a fake image, I've generated this for fun, it's all okay. So only when I start using it to defraud people or to malign people, then it becomes an issue. So again, controlling it is hard because it's in the face of it, it is not a bad thing, right? So we can do a lot of good things with this technology. It becomes the intention, then becomes a question. So a lot of problems with understanding AI. So many issues with regard to building these AI systems, right? So actually, people who label these things as toxic versus non-toxic actually develop mental problems, right? So that's people don't talk about. Of course, this is another huge issue that's happening right now in India. We are facing this, like copyright things are there, and now I just read a few minutes before the talk, that a bunch of news agencies have joined ANI in filing case against OpenAI about use of their sources in building these models, and so AI is going to have impact on jobs. It's going to have impact on security. In fact, it's going to even have impact on the evolution of society. I'll talk about that one slide after this. And of course, environment, there will be a significant impact. You can read what is out there, right? So it's basically equivalent to 5 billion US cross-country flights in a year, right? And so here are some examples of, so that's in the middle. So Midjourney was asked to generate a picture of an Indian person, not an Indian man, Indian person. And you can see that it generated old men wearing turbans. That's what I thought an Indian person looks like. And Indian women, on the other hand, it's asked to generate a picture of Indian women who are all very young, beautiful women, but wearing orange clothing for some reason. Right? So these are kind of stereotypes, but even worse, this is Indian houses here. Right? It looks like temples to me. Right? They don't look like houses, but then that's what these AI models think Indian houses look like. So, and that was like a year ago. I looked at what's happening now, right? So they got some part of the diversity. The middle part is Indian person, not an Indian woman. So they, like they did with the Gemini thing, right? They completely corrected over now. They're only generating women, not men, right? But at least they are young and old women. But once you ask them to generate Indian women, again it went back to generating young women. But at least you have diversity in their clothes. You have blue dresses also, not just orange dresses, right? But the housing, oh man, still bad. That's what these Gen AI models think Indian houses look like. Typical Indian house looks like. So Gen AI, we need these models for India, right? So here is what Arvind Narayanan, one of the leading thinkers about AI, says that we underestimated the huge gap between proofs of concepts of these AI systems and building reliable products out of these AI systems. So we are still struggling with it, even though we are getting better and better AI models, getting that reliability factor in building these products is a long way to go, and we have a lot of work to do, right? So this is the outcome of this, right? So 96% of C-suite leaders expect AI to increase productivity, and nearly 50% of their managers don't know how. Right? So that's where we are at in some sense. So I had a couple of slides on something that we do in India. So you don't need some of these LLM models, NAI models to solve real problems in India. What you really need, or understanding what these problems are, right? What kind of data is available? What kind of reliability do you need in the answer? So we actually built models that allow you to predict the age of Indian fetuses, right? So we've always been using US models, right, to predict the age, and it turns out that they are off by 30% sometimes. So that can be pretty bad in terms of the medical outcomes, right? And likewise, so this is some work that we did with some Google, where they used non-deep, non-generative AI technology for helping identify women who are at risk of dropping out of a healthcare program. And this is another interesting project that we did. where we looked at the muscles of cattle, right? And they are unique to each cow, like a fingerprint, and we can build models that predict, which cow is what, right? So you can actually use it as a fingerprint, and then so basically we had an app that can that allows you to tag these cows without having to poke them and add tags and so on and so forth. And that's something, again, not using Gen AI model. So depending on what problem you're trying to solve, right? So you need to look at a holistic design, right? So AI offers only a fraction of the process. AI is only a fraction of the process. You really have to think about how you solve the problem, right? So a lot of work needs to be done. And I like to say we have a lot of Indian problems, and we need Indian solutions for it. So all the students here, it's up to you now. Yeah. Thanks.
We'll just do a quick Q&A. I thought, I'll have to ask you to keep standing. That's the only thing.
That's fine. Yeah, let's save the time to bring the chairs on table.
Professor, I wanted to ask you that you talked about this. Tell me the architecture that is coming up in India between government and private sector to actually look at this more closely. Is it something that will be like the fintech model?
So, so India has, announced this India AI mission, right? So the idea behind India AI mission is to look at more holistic investment into different aspects of AI. So, so AI, you typically need talent, you need compute, you need data, you need AI models, and so on and so forth. And each one of these, right? So there were several committees that were that thought through this, and then there has been multiple of these that have been proposed, right? Multiple verticals that have been proposed, and there are 7 of these that India AI mission is actually looking to invest in, right? And so the one piece that is of particular relevance to some of the stuff I talk about is the safety, right? AI safety pillar, as they call it. So the idea is to think about, how would you identify what are unsafe about AI and what should be regulated and what should not be, and so on and so forth. And the idea is to have some form of a research-driven agenda for figuring out how, as the technology evolves, what's the right way to use the technology, right? And for this, it has to be something that has significant involvement, not just from the technology people, and not just from the government, but from the industry, and also from people who are worried about the impact of technology on society, who actually, and journalists who could actually go and help us take these things out there, and so on and so forth. And so one of the things that we have been recommending is that the Safety Institute should be really a multi-stakeholder body, right? That conducts deep research into all the safety issues with regard to the new AI models, and recommend several things. One is what kind of self-regulatory mechanisms that should the industry adopt, right? So, I mean, this has to be obviously done in collaboration with the industry. And then the second thing is, okay, what kind of tools and what kind of metrics can, people, the regulators in different sectors, right, can rely on to evaluate the AI use in that sector. So right. That's very important, because the AI regulation cannot be something that is monolithic. Like I said, AI itself is not a single technology, and depending on where you apply AI, right? One example is the question of fairness. When I'm talking about fairness in the context of banking, I don't want to use gender as a predictive attribute. But when I'm talking about fairness in the context of healthcare, I want to use gender, right? I mean, so gender is a very, very important thing. So depending on what sector we are operating in, the kind of guidelines, the kind of rules that you'll have to put in are going to be very different. And the role of the Safety Institute should be in trying to understand all of these, right? And overall, the governing structure itself, right? So we have been suggesting that the independent sectoral regulators that are there should continue to also look at the impact of AI on their respective sectors. But the government should set up some kind of a inter-ministerial coordination body, right, that allows the people to compare notes, and also making sure that the different regulators don't say contradictory things about AI, because once that happens, then compliance will become an issue, and then will become a huge hindrance for innovation. So those are the things that we should look at.
But from your PPT, it looked as if AI is actually quite stupid. Or can be stupid.
Yeah, can be stupid? I mean, the thing is, I mean, if you ask me such questions, right, I have to tell you, okay, can you define stupid?
Stupid, exactly.
With
There's levels of
mathematically. So then I
stupidity.
can go out and measure it, right?
Yeah.
So you can't. So
Yeah.
you have to actually look at it from, more from a impression point of view, and I don't know if you can actually measure it. So a lot of work that we do in at IIT Madras and other places also, is to actually figure out what is it that you can measure about the AI. Right? So that you can say, hey, in this particular application, if the AI satisfies A, B, C, then you can use it with appropriate, safety measures in place. But if it's not able to satisfy A, B, C, then you shouldn't be using AI. It could potentially be fairly stupid. In fact, even the most advanced AI, I can pose problems which a 4-year-old can solve, which the AI can't solve, right? So, yeah, so it can be stupid. It can be amazingly impressive sometimes.
Which, for a layperson, if they wanted to understand AI, which is the best course or the best source they should go to? Is it the course that you were suggesting that IIT Madras has started, the online BS course?
Oh no, online BS is actually a fairly rigorous course. It's actually a degree, right? So it's hard for, if the layperson to get an understanding of AI, that's not it. Right? In fact, it's a little sad. I mean, I can't quite recommend a specific
a source or
source
a person.
that
You were
for the lay
earlier,
people, right?
yeah.
I mean, there are several of us like me who have done podcasts, who have done talks and things like that on trying to explain AI to the common people. I've been doing this for at least 3, 4, 5 years now, but there are people who have been doing this longer. So that material is available online, right? But this is not a course, right? It's not like a certificate that you can get saying, hey, I understand what AI is now. So that kind of material is still not available, not just here, right? Globally also.
So that's a problem that AI can solve.
AI can solve fairly easily, for that,
And just the last point, what will it take what is the kind of funding that we will need? Because we're always in this self-imposed race with China to get ahead of them and everything. They are, I think, currently pretty good on AI. What is the kind of funding that it would need?
So the latest breakthroughs that China has been announcing, right, actually is good news for India in some sense, right? So people are actually, some places they say, oh my God, China has gone so far ahead of us, but that's not really the case. What China has done, luckily, is that they have open sourced all their new innovations. So that actually gives us a big step up. Right? And the second thing is, they've actually shown, even though people have been trying to crack this problem for a while around the world, but China has had the initial breakthrough. I mean, as would happen in science, right? So sometimes you get some groups having the initial breakthrough, but they have done something amazing. So they are now able to train things at a fraction of the cost of what originally ChatGPT needed or Meta needed to train their models. And so at about basically a 10th of the investment that India originally thought we would need to catch up with the US, seems to be something that's feasible now, that on which we can build competitive AI models and then go on from there to improve on that, right? So I think...
so you're talking about a new space program, that kind of cost, or much more?
No. I mean, India is great, right? I mean, look, who would have thunk that we will get Mangalyaan to fly at that cost? Yeah. So we can certainly do things. Like I think we should set up our own, AI's own PSLV kind of initiative for us, and then do it at a significantly lower cost.
Lower cost for the world.
We can do for the world. Yeah. Of course, for the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was really entertaining and insightful. So thank you very much. Thank you. May we have a round of applause for the professor who had to quickly leave his class to come here, right? Thank you so much, sir.